Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today we have Ritzy
Rilzy.
on my channel today. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Okay, pronounce it again.
Rilzy.
Rilzy.
Yeah.
Okay, Rilzy, tell us about yourself.
I don't know why this is always a hard question. I feel like if it's the hardest question that you're ever asked. I'm a 31-year-old attorney by day, romance writer by night, Sims obsessed, Prosecco fiend, in love with sushi, reading, and a dog mom of 2. I think that's and coffee addict.
Okay. What is your genre and what attracts you to that genre?
I write romance. So when I started writing epic fantasy. So Game of Thrones meets Lord of the Rings, those sorts of things. But I found that whenever I had a bad day or I was bored or I had growing up, I would read as I ate. And so whenever I was eating a meal that I really, really enjoyed, so I wanted a really good book to go with it, I always reached for romance. And after a while, I thought to myself, well, why am I not writing romance? And I transitioned from there.
Okay. Now tell us about each one of your books and what inspired them.
Everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the first one would be The Gift. So I had a 6-book series following a Black legal family called Falling Like the Johnsons. And so I should say that most of my book ideas just start with I wonder what would happen if XYZ happened. And so I think I was at school, because I think that idea started while I was at, I think the American equivalent would have been 12th grade, but we called it A-levels or 6th form. So I was in class and bored, and I thought to myself, I wonder what would happen if I got married to someone my best friend hated. And that's not really a romance plot. But then after a while, I thought to myself, well, I wonder what would happen with the friendship the hate between my best friend and my partner if I died. And then I thought, well, I wonder what would happen if, no, but then I said to myself, but then they'd just not speak to each other. There'd be no reason for them to communicate. So I said, well, I wonder what would happen if they had to. And I said, well, I wonder what would happen if my best friend was my surrogate and I died. And then there was this baby linking them. And then I thought, I wonder if anyone could fall in love in those circumstances. And then I wrote The Gift.
Oh, okay.
So that story is about, it follows the lead female character called Naya, and Jackson is the lead male character, and they hated like the only thing they had in common was the love for Charlotte, who was the best friend. But endometriosis rendered her infertile and she needed a surrogate. And her best friend offered. She wasn't too excited about it, but she thought, you know what, in 9 months, I'll hand over the baby. My best friend will be happy and it will be worth it. But she dies shortly after she finds out that the surrogacy caught. And then they had to try to navigate them not liking each other, being forced into this sort of situation, and a romance develops. It took me forever to write it because I kept going, oh no, I'm not really sure. I have to make sure that it's not too quick or it seems believable. But I think it was a nice story. And then the second one followed another brother in the series. That was actually the first one I wrote. And it was, well, what would happen if you, for some reason, had to go to the wedding of someone you loved who never loved you back? Would you go alone? Would you try to find someone to pretend to be a boyfriend? And that's what she did, but not knowing that her best friend, who pretended to be her boyfriend, had been pining for her for years. And that's how their romance started. And the third one, when I was plotting the series, one of the things that I had all of them, their names began with J. So it was Jackson and James, and they were twins. Wow. Oh, Jasper and Jasmine. And then in the middle, there was this one person called Orlando, and I couldn't understand, well, why do I have a name called Orlando? And so I thought, what would happen if like someone had been fostered or adopted? And so Orlando came into the family at 10. He had a different name, but they would tease James, which would have been the second brother, that he had more traits, more Johnson traits in his little finger than James had in his entire body. The father, the patriarch of the family said that the universe knew that you were meant to be my son and conspired to bring you to me. And so he had a rough upbringing. He finally made his way to the Johnsons, and as a part of his spare time when he was not doing legal work, he was a mentor for a young child. And it just so happened that the child's mother had overdosed and he was going into the system. And so he wanted to foster him. And that brought him face to face with the woman that he broke up with 10 years prior, because she was the social worker, and they had their second shot at love. And the fourth one follows Jasmine, who is the first of the younger of the twins, but I put her story first. And that was basically inspired by work. I thought, well, what would happen if I had to work with a lawyer I hated? And they were enemies to lovers. The lead male thought that she only got her job via nepotism and not via hard work and what was earned. And so he had a chip on his back for the entire time. But they were finally put together to work on a case, and they fell in love along the way. And then the fifth one followed the final brother, Jasper, who just made a lot of bad decisions. I find that when I get feedback from readers, he was the one that they had a lot of trouble, well, not relating to, but they just wanted to smack him upside his head because he was just making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. But eventually he left. His father fired him from his job. And so he left the country. He visited Antigua to look for a way to escape or to try to get his life back together. I think that book was called The Sweetest Escape. And he fell in love with a local girl, and that was their story. And for the sixth book, there should be a seventh, but for the sixth and seventh books, I thought, well, with romance novels, we're very big on happily ever after. In fact, there is an argument, and I really subscribe to it, that if there's no happily ever after or no happy for no, it's not genre romance. It can be like lit fiction or women fiction with a romantic subplot, but it's not genre romance. And I've always wondered, well, what happens after the happily ever after? What happens when real life starts to come in? Let me revisit some of these couples. And so in the sixth book, I revisited the third brother, Orlando and Katrina. My best friend said that I picked on them a lot because they had the toughest love story in the initial book. And then I gave them marital difficulties following the death of a child, of their child, and how they dealt with the fallout from that. But it is a romance novel, so there was a happily ever after or a happy for now at the end of it. So that would be the Johnson series. After that, or before or during, I wrote a book called Off Key. It's not a very popular one. I think it's the oldest writing of all the writings that I have. It just was released somewhere in the middle of the Johnsons. That was just because I was in law school and annoyed. And it was exam period and I wanted something to do other than study. And so my friends challenged me to write a book on WordPress at the time. I think I had a blog on WordPress. And so I had to upload, I think it was 3 chapters every 3 days or something along the lines. And that was she wanted to be a recording artist, but she wasn't popular at all. And so her record label gave her an ultimatum. We're going to enter into a show romance with this artist who definitely needs a change of character. He needs to change up his character. We need to find, the public needs to see him in a different light. We're going to try to use you to do that. And if that works, then we'll keep you on. And so they had a showmance, except he had this bad boy sort of reputation, and she was not very pleased. I think that that may have been a little bit more new adult, now that I think about it, than yeah, I think it may have been more a new adult romance, because they were relatively young. They were like 21 and 23, which I'm not sure how the new adult ages, what they range from, but that was off key. And then my other series, not going in order now because my memory is not good enough to do that, but my other series are the Love and the Rock series. When I was growing up, so I live in Antigua, I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And when I was growing up, one of the things that I really, really wanted to do was write some romance novels that were just set entirely on Antigua. And so I had that, I have series set aside for that. They don't always follow each other, but once they're set entirely on Antigua, they flip into that series. So the first two were Christmas novels, and the first one was called The 12 Dates of Christmas. Mm-hmm. And this was another friends to lovers. So best friends, they'd introduced sex at some point in their relationship. Things went bad, and they hadn't spoken to each other for years. And the male MC, Rashad, he said, well, I actually think we make a good couple. So I'm here for Christmas. Give me 12 dates to prove to you that we'd be good together. And it follows their journey. And the other one, which is actually one of my favorite books, is You, Me Plus Baby. And that was, well, what would happen if you got pregnant after a one night stand? And so it follows Andre and Fran. They had been seeing each other in the gym. They thought each other they were kind of cute. They never really spoke. And they met up at a party and had what was supposed to be a one night stand. Mm-hmm. And she got pregnant. And it navigates like how they went through that and eventually fell in love. And there's Brand New, which was a novelette. I think it was 9,000 words. It was a very short New Year's book. And the thought behind that was, what would happen if you're locked up with in some place that you couldn't escape for a while with someone that you hated. And so for Brand New, it started, I think, 5 hours before the new year. My lead female, Regina, was locked in the basement of her house during her own New Year's Eve party with a guy she really couldn't stand called Quentin. And they were stuck until people would have realized that they were missing, and nobody really did until after the New Year's, and sparks flew. And then there's Birthday Shot, and that trope was my brother's best friend, or the other way around, my best friend's little sister. She had a crush on her brother's best friend forever, but he was off limits because brother's best friend. And he comes back for her brother's engagement party, and birthday falls along. For this one, it wasn't a what if. For this one, it was COVID time. My 30th birthday fell in the middle of lockdown, and I had nothing to do. And I said, well, I'm gonna write something that has the 30th birthday that I wish I could have had. And, so that it was centered around her birthday party and her best friend saying, you should shoot your shot. It's your birthday. Like, let him know that you like him and see what happens. And it follows their story. And then there's Go Deep, which was, well, Go Deep wasn't a what if. Go Deep was one of my friends had posted on Twitter that she was looking for a friends to lovers book. She was looking for that specific trope. And I was messing around with her. So I'm like, ooh, you can read Will You Be Mine or 12 Days of Christmas. Like, I have so many friends to lovers tropes. And she's like, don't be silly. I've read them. I've read those already. So I said, okay, bet. I'm gonna write you one. And she thought I was joking, but I wasn't really. And so I remember I was on Pinterest and I found two names. And I thought to myself, well, let's just see what your mind comes up with. And it came up with, well, what would happen if, well, I guess I eventually went there. Well, what would happen if you wrote erotic romance? Your readers were saying, nah, you're not hitting the spot anymore, but you're not having sex and you're feeling that this is why I'm not writing anything that's good. I have no inspiration. Would you ever turn to your best friend? And what would happen? That was Go Deep. Love in the Time of Corona. That was early pandemic days. That was when people thought that things were going to be over by July. And I had, I think my ex and I had broken up the year before, like 2019, I think. And, or no, 2018. But when we had broken up, we had continued living together for about a month after the breakup. And I said to myself, wow, it works because people could stay out late and come home late and you could leave so that you weren't in each other's space for too long. And I remember saying to my friends, I would have killed him if it was we were on to quarantine and neither of us could have left the house. Like, yeah, I think that I'm not sure that there would have been a good outcome here. I thought, well, what would happen? Like, what would happen or what is happening? People are now stuck in houses with people that they cannot stand, relationships that have gone sour. And I guess I wanted, and I guess I acknowledged, like in my head, like some people would have been in a really bad situation. I wouldn't have killed him. I feel like if I need to say, I would not have killed him. I cannot practice law with a criminal conviction. But I would have wanted to. And so Love in the Time of Corona, and also there's the book, Love in the Time of Cholera. When I was younger, I used to keep saying I would write all of these books called In the Time, Love in the Time of. I started something called Love in the Time of Law School, those sorts of things. I think it was a natural name choice for the book. And it focused on a couple who were on the verge of divorce. The wife wanted a divorce because she felt like if her husband had not been present, and they were spite sharing their apartment prior to COVID. He didn't want to let go, so he didn't want to move out. He went as far as saying, well, we're gonna have to debate custody of our dog. And they were spite sharing, and then suddenly at mediation, they were exposed. And so they had to quarantine for the 14 days. And they used that time to try to figure out, well, can we be saved? And it's a romance novel. So for them, they had their happily ever after. And for me, that wasn't it was a very therapeutic for me, because at the start of COVID, it was very isolating and it was very scary because we didn't know what was going on. I feel as if we thought that no one expected it to be as bad as it ended up being. But it was this element of just not knowing what was happening. And it felt really good to be able to write a definite happy ending. That one book kept me sane, I must say. In the few weeks that it took me to write that book, I think that if I hadn't been doing it, I may have been just in bed crying, which is my response when I'm very stressed out about things. And then there's 8. I've been watching a vlog on YouTube where a young lady hired a private chef for her birthday for her and her friends. And I thought, this is interesting. Let me see if I can do a story with a private chef and include some food and cooking. That was really fun. So that followed Rust and Tempest. Tempest had just sold her company. She quit law, which a lot of my characters do. I'm not sure there's a little message there, but she quit law to launch her skincare and hair care, her natural skincare and hair care line. And she was eventually able to sell the company. And she wanted to celebrate with her best friend, Win, but Win was an OBGYN and she had to deliver some babies. It popped up. And so instead of canceling it, she's like, you know what? I'm gonna celebrate on my own. And the chef was way to her liking. There was an instant attraction, and they got together doing that. Love Scam, which is my last release to date, that was in the same world as it. It followed Tempest's other best friend, Monet, who had a really bad relationship in the past, and she just was not interested in dating. And they kept trying to set her up. She kept saying, nah, I'm good. It's okay. And she kept going, no, I know this person will be great for you. She's like, nah, this is good. And so they conspired. They set her up on a blind date that she knew nothing about in a foreign country during Valentine's Day.
Wow.
And that was Love Scam. To date, I think they're my favorite couple. There was just something about both of them that I think was very, very cute. And Hudson is big. I keep saying that all the time. He was very sweet. And then there was Ho Ho Ho. Now, Ho 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 was a Christmas book, and that was, I think I was messing around with that. I was on Twitter and I thought, I wonder what would happen if I wrote a Christmas book called Ho Ho Ho. And then person said, well, do it. And so I did. And I think the first line for that book was, it was the chlamydia that did it, because she was married to a man who just cheated nonstop. That was all he did. And she had saved herself for marriage. She thought like these kind of things. I think for of all the books, I think Ho 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 tries to explore or ended up exploring like sexual norms and stuff like that. So she'd met the lead male character at a bar the year before, just as she was about to file for divorce, or when the divorce came through. And she was complaining to him that, imagine going to your doctor's office to get a workup to see where you are with your fertility. And she's like, yes, you need to sit down because I got back your STD panel and it's not looking very good, in circumstances where you saved yourself for marriage for this person, you felt smug about it and all of these kind of things. And he said, well, maybe you should just, live a little, explore a little. And they met a year later, and that was when they got together. And I think that is all. Oh, sorry, there's Deeper, which is the wedding story for Go Deep. So it just follows the wedding for Xander and Nevaeh. And I think that should be it.
Okay, can you show us the book covers?
Sure. I was mentioning to you that a lot of them are not in paperback yet. I'm working on it. So this is 8. And this is Go Deep and Deeper. So I kind of try to have the cover artists use similar things with that one. This is Love Scam. You Me Plus Baby. 12 Dates of Christmas. And The Gift. For some reason, I do not have Birthday Shot and Will You Be Mine on me right now, but I'll just pop up some of these on my Kindle. Okay. This is, oh no, not gonna work. Oh, well, no. The lighting. I'll see if maybe that's just because the cover is so white, but that would have been just one more kind. This is birthday shot.
Okay.
Mm.
What inspired you to start writing?
I couldn't draw. Um, so I had a cousin who is a really good artist, and I always used to like the idea of drawing, but oh no, I was not blessed. I'm really bad at drawing. And so I think I was very young at the time. I was maybe 6 or 7, and I was very sad and posty about it. And my mom said to me, "Well, you don't have to draw to tell the story." So she used to read a lot of Sidney Sheldon books, and so she brought them out and she said, look at these books. Like, there are no photos inside, but they tell a story." And so she said to me, "Well, you know what? Instead of trying to draw what you want to convey, just write it down." And then I promptly started writing about children assassins. I'm not really sure where that came from, but that's what I did from about 7 to 8. Those are the list of stories that I started writing, and then I guess they started moving with age until I was about 13, and then I started writing the epic fantasy. I just loved creating the worlds and my creatures and whatnot, and then I went into romance, and I was a little bit older.
Okay. What, in your opinion, are the most important elements of good writing?
Two things I think. In my head, I want to say you must have a compelling plot, which is true. You must have some sort of a plot, but I think books that are able to capture or evoke emotion, and I don't even know like what must come together to get that to happen. But I feel as if one of the most important elements of good writing is to be able to have your readers feel something for your characters. Because I've read books with complicated, well executed plots, and it's brilliant when you follow the plot lines, but I'm blah at best about the characters. They could end up together. That'd be good, but they also could not. I'm really not that invested. And I've read books that may have had some plot holes. Could have been tied with the actual writing, but I cared so strongly about these characters that it just did not matter. It would be great if you had all of it, but I think you should set out to evoke emotion. And you do that through plot, you do that through imagery and descriptors, but I feel as if that should always be an aim. Even if the emotions are intense. I've read books with characters that I hated so much that I hate them now. And I read the entire book hoping for their demise. And there's one book, and I don't remember the book. I can't tell the character itself, that I read years ago. I don't really remember the plot that much. And the person was a side character. The person was the person who prevented the lead characters from having their happily ever after earlier. She made them break up for about 10 years. And it's been years later, and I still remember that tense emotion. And I thought, yeah, the writers did a good job at that. So I think that's one of the most important elements. Sorry.
What comes first, the plot or the characters?
For me, it's usually that question. And and it's never usually really the plot. It's usually that question, and then I try to figure out. I get it'll be some semblance half of the plot. Something just flew off of my table. So it's half of the plot, and then I try to figure out what characters would be best suited for this this sort of scenario, and then once I get writing, the characters themselves usually influence how the rest of the plot, or sometimes how the book actually plays out. I've had plots, I've introduced the characters, and then halfway through I went, oh, this is not really the story that they want me to tell. And so I'd have to go back and change it.
How do you develop your characters?
I have a lot of Pinterest boards, and just for aesthetics, to see the kind of things they may like. And yes. One of my friends, when we were in school, he had this book. It's called Dynamic Characters. I haven't read the book. I'm not sure he knows that I still have the book, but I haven't read the book. But it has a questionnaire. Just kind of, I'm trying to find the chapter so that I could show it. Maybe this looks very smushed up. So it has like this questionnaire on get to know your characters, and it asks a lot of questions like, what kinds of food does your character like? Like, does she cook? Does she cook well? Does she enjoy shopping? What does she like to shop for? And so I fill out one of these. I go pinning first, just randomly for maybe half of an hour, and then I fill out one of these, and then I spend a little time just trying to think about them and see what feels right. Because sometimes, like this one is for my next book, Before We Fall, and I didn't use half of what I said would there, because as I started writing, I thought, well, this feels more natural, but it's a good place to start from.
What is the most difficult part about writing for you?
The middle. I think starting is good, and then you get to the middle and you're trying to make sure that you're not dragging, or you're not going too fast. And so the middle of a book, I find, is the most tedious. That's when I generally want to put it down and come back to it next year. But I think from a practical point of view, finding the time. So for me, I have a very demanding job, and sometimes it's just hard to find the time to focus. So right now, actually, I'm on a bit of a hiatus for a few months for 2 reasons. I suffer from chronic migraines, and work is getting stressful. And because we've had a long sort of a break because of COVID, but now we're trying to get back to normal because, well, people have to have their trials heard. And so we're about to start to get very busy. And I knew if I continue trying to smush everything together, while we might be extra busy, I would continue making myself sick. Because it used to be me getting up really early, about 4 in the morning, to write before work, and then writing for my entire weekend, because that was just the only way that it would fit in. So from a practical level, finding the time, but from a writing perspective, the middle is really hard.
What was your favorite part and least favorite part about your publishing journey?
So I self-publish, and I self-published because I knew to myself that, so I should mention, I'm a prosecutor. So I work for the equivalent of the DA's office. And I knew that if it ever came down to obligations to my virtual complainants and ensuring that I can put forward the best case ever, and my writing, it would always be to my complainants. And I was very worried about having deadlines that I'd miss, because I may have something happening in court, or things being, I'm sorry about my neighbors who are being very low. I may have something in court or something like that. And so I was concerned about what traditional publishing may have looked like for me. And so I thought, well, maybe I should just publish, because at least it allows me to control what I do when I do it. And I wouldn't be disappointing other people, because I find that that's something that I struggle with worrying about a lot. So I think one of the best parts would be the freedom. I find that I mean, you're controlling everything. That can be stressful in and of itself, because you get to outsource your editing and your covers and all those kind of things. But there's the freedom both in my content. I get to write what I want to write. It may miss, but I I I have more opportunities, in my opinion, to be off to my voice. So that's what I love the most. I think what I hate the most is that there's still this big comparison between being self-published and traditionally published. People still seem to think that there's validation from being traditionally published. And yeah, that's it, I think. That's been rough to grasp, because I'm like, but that's not true though, is it? We do produce good work. Maybe I'm biased, but we do produce good work. And I do read a lot of indie romance. I read a lot of indie Black romance. And so I think that has been the hardest. And then also, I think it's a little bit, it puts you in a weird position, because it's sometimes it feels like if you have to take a stance, you're saying, well, I'm self-published and we are just as worthy. And so I'll never think about traditional publishing, when you may want to try your hands at both. For me, I don't think that I'm in a, because everything I said before still stands, where I have to be very careful that I'm not pissing off a publisher because I have obligations to my job. But yeah, because I do have some friends. I have one friend, and I think that he would be really, really good. He has tons and tons and tons of work, but he's determined that he will be traditionally published, but then he will not query because he's worried. I'm like, but you could try to at least self-publish one. I promise it's not going to make you seem like a not serious writer. But yeah.
Okay. What is the most surprising thing you discovered while writing your books?
It's gonna sound like a big, that people read them. I'm sorry. That may sound like a stupid answer, but really, yeah, it is. I did not expect people to really read them. At some point it was, I'm writing these books because I have to. Maybe let me just put them out there and one or two people will read. But that has been my biggest surprise over the entire journey, and it continues to be surprising every time I realize that there are people actually reading things that I've created.
Tell us about the process of coming up with your covers.
So I use Fiverr to get my covers more often than not, and then there are some indie romance authors who also do covers. So Brianne Dene, I'm always on her site, just scrolling down, doing weird things, buying covers that I have no use for. So she designed these two covers, and it was just as simple as scrolling down. That most of the times I already kind of have the book, and I know what I'm looking for, and I would go on her site and scroll down and find something that I like, and that will be it. Or I use a cover artist on Fiverr called, I think her name is Lena, but I think her handle is German Creative. And I'd go and deposit posts, which is something I'm trying to stop. I've saved up to hopefully be able to stop in the future. So I'd scroll through the stock images, find something that I think may work, and then I would send it to her with, and she's done almost all of them. I'd send it to her with the idea of what the book will be. And she will go ahead and come back with a design. I don't really put, I don't have a lot of effort in the covers. I just find pretty photos I like. But going into, well, maybe next year, since this year is going to be a little bit odd, I want to try to actually take photos, hire persons here to take a set of photos, and so that I'm not using stock images, so that it lessens the possibility of someone having the same image that I do. I do have one person lined up that I want him to do. Well, we're trying to think about a few ways that I can get a couple covers out of his photo shoot. And I do have a photographer lined up. So
what avenues do you take to market your books?
I'm notoriously bad at marketing. Marketing for me really generally consists of talking a lot about my books on Twitter and Instagram. I don't do much else. So I'll say this, when I first started, so this goes back to me saying that it's just surprising to me that people read my books at all. When I first started actually publishing the things that I wrote, I thought to myself, build it and maybe they'll come. And the aim had always been, I'm just going to write a bunch of things. I'm going to have a huge backlist, and then I will focus on marketing. And I feel as if it's been really hard for me to get out of that mindset that, hey, you do have 17 books now. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it is time to focus on marketing. So I've promised myself that in these few months that I'm not publishing, because I am still writing, just not as much and not enough to publish with any strict schedule. So in these few months that I'm not publishing, I'm going to come up with ways to properly utilize other publishing sources, like other marketing sources, because mostly it's been by word of mouth and me talking a lot on Twitter. I don't really use Facebook a lot, to be honest. Sometimes I don't sign into Facebook for a really long time, and then I pop up and I see things. But I use Instagram and I use Twitter a lot. But I think I know that I need to look into more avenues.
What has been your greatest accomplishment in your literary career so far?
I think that, and one of my friends has said to me, when you look at my voice, as in my writing voice, in Go Deep, not Go Deep, sorry, in The Gift, as opposed to my writing voice in Love Scammed, you can see a transition of someone who is slowly growing into confidence in their own voice. And I think that has been it, the growth, allowing myself to relax more into my voice, accepting that perhaps my writing may not be for everyone, and that's okay. And but not allowing those things to distract me while I am writing, being my most authentic self, I think.
Yes.
That's my biggest accomplishment thus far.
What are you
I'm a baby writer, but I'm moving from crawling to walking, and that makes me feel good.
Okay. What are you currently working on right now?
I am currently working on the sequel to, well, not sequel, sorry, the second book in the series with, find it, in the series with Goji and Navaya. In Goji, I teased a lot about the best friend, Tasha. And I didn't give I think I'm really bad. I think that's something that needs improving. I think I tease for a second book in ways that apparently don't invite just curiosity. It makes some people mad. I've realized that in the Johnson series because I kept teasing for Jasper's book like throughout the entire series. And by the fourth book, I think I remember someone saying, okay, you're gonna really just have to tell us what's going on because at this stage, it is a bit much. So I think I need to learn to tone down the amount of teasing versus what I'm willing to give. But it does follow Tasha's story. Tasha and Cole. So Cole is Xander's good friend and Tasha is Navaya's good friend. I'm working on that now. And then I'm getting ready to start to work on a book called But as Friends Though. And that is following Win from 8, her journey.
Okay. Where can readers find you and your books?
My books are on Amazon. All of them are on Kindle Unlimited. As it stands right now, where ebooks are concerned, if they're enrolled in Kindle Unlimited, they need to be exclusive to Amazon. So my ebooks are exclusive to Amazon and the paperbacks are sold on Amazon. Yeah, I can be found on Amazon.
Okay.
That's a very long way of saying that.
Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
Other than really, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. And I'm just great. I continuously feel like a kid that's been invited to a party and who's just happy to be in. Like, I feel like if that is the best way to describe my writing journey so far, I'm just happy to be here. And I'm so grateful. And I'm so happy that there's a space for me to share these stories that I write because writing is so integral to me. I wouldn't be happy if I didn't write. So I'd be writing regardless because I have to, but it's been a really humbling, amazing journey to see people love characters as much as I love them and see people being entertained by books in the same way I am when I go on like my reading splurges. It's been a blessing.
All right. Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.